This week on the Reality Testing Podcast. I did not realize until a couple of years ago how many influencers are Mormon. But I think we got to see a lot more of the niche things.
To think that they have these secret lives where they're doing what we're all doing, or maybe even worse.
Right.
It's fascinating because Mormonism has always been so intriguing because I feel like there's so much secrecy to it. This girl is used to being treated like garbage.
We are two shrinks obsessed with reality TV. We are breaking down our favorite reality shows, the characters, and what psychology has to say about human behavior when it's being filmed. Pull up a seat and let's get started. This has been a little brainchild of ours for a long time, basically, because that's all we text about.
They're us, but in Fendi.
And we're like, oh my gosh, but also that's me. Just a quick reminder here, we are psychologists talking about mental health themes, but we are not diagnosing anyone in these episodes. This show is for educational and entertainment purposes only and should not be considered mental health advice. If you're experiencing a mental health crisis, please contact 988 if you're here in the US or seek local support wherever you are. You can access additional resources at realitytestingpod.com/resources.
Today, we are talking about Mom Talk. This one has been long awaited, The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives. I've been dying to talk about this one.
Yes. So I feel like this, I found it on accident. I felt like I was at home with the baby, scrolling through something, trying to figure out what I was going to watch that day. And I found it on the day that it went live. And this is before the social media firestorm. I'm not connected to Mom Talk. Are you?
No, I had never heard of the swinging scandal, Taylor Frankie Paul.
Same.
None of it. I out of the way.
Same.
And I don't know if that's because we're a little older than the TikTok generation.
Yeah.
It's because we're not Mormon. I don't know, but it was not on my radar at all.
So I think that this is something that we should talk about eventually, but I did not realize until a couple of years ago how many influencers are Mormon.
Yes.
There's this huge culture of influencing in the Mormon church, in the Mormon culture, all of these women, ladies, whatever, that have are supporting their families on social media. Now it started all of us elder millennials. It started on Instagram, but now it's moved to TikTok, which is probably why I don't have as much connection to it.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's also the overlap between influencing Mormon culture and then MLMs is just fascinating to me.
Yes. Yes. And how that's all playing out. Okay. So what were your first impressions? You watched the show.
Yeah. So my first impression was I thought from the teaser and from what I kind of heard on social media rumblings that it was going to be more about the swinging scandal. And that really didn't get mentioned at all after episode 1. We didn't talk about it at all.
Right. So I was sort of left with this question of wait, so who participated? Who was a part of this scandal? I felt like they were all a part of this Mom Talk group, but there was kind of these individual scenes where they were saying but I wasn't a part of that, but I was. So who was?
And to what
that
degree?
Was never and that was never very clear.
No, the whole show, I mean, speaking of my first impressions, the whole show left me with many, many questions that I think a lot went unanswered. And I don't know if that's because it's a new show and they didn't quite know where they were going when they made the pilot and then it evolved into something. Or is that just how these people are, where they put one version of themselves forward and we're all left scratching our heads? I'm not sure.
Well, the jump scare between the first episode and the rest of the season, there was a year gap between the filming. So everyone felt like they had changed the way that they showed up. Their hair was shorter. Some looked different. One was pregnant. My God. There was these huge changes between that first episode and then the rest of the season that we watched play out.
Yeah. Yeah. Which probably led to a lot of the questions that I have. And now just hearing recently that it got picked up for a season 2 of like
Yes.
20 episodes or something, like a lot.
20 episodes. Yeah. Like we're going to have a deep dive. We're going to have a Real Housewife type season
Yes.
from them where you kind of like see them through an entire season of the year, like fall or the holidays or, something like that.
Which is another kind of reaction that I had to it initially, is like how similar it was to like early Real Housewives seasons.
Yeah.
And so I'm hoping for more of that kind of format to come through in it.
Totally. I felt one of my first impressions was just how, I mean, we've seen this on the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City in some ways, because I think Heather Gay does a really good job of trying to talk about Mormon culture and like what deviates from that. But I think we got to see a lot more of the niche things, like the soda shops versus the coffee, and the the way in which families function, and the way in which like Taylor's mom and even Whitney's mom were like very vocal about their disapproval of certain things. And that was taken very seriously. I mean, I think in other cultures, yes, these things might be taken seriously, but there's also this like, this is how I make money, like back off.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that they didn't have that same privilege, I don't think. There was like a lot of heavy hitting from the moms, involvement from the moms.
Yeah. And I have to think, I mean, if we just consider how women are treated in this culture, it makes a lot of sense. Like that is what the woman can take ownership of, as the family. And so when you are threatening the image of that family, that's going to invite a really strong reaction from the matriarch of that family.
Yes. Yes.
And maybe why influencing is so popular in this community.
Yes.
It's the one thing
Yeah.
they could do while being a mom.
Yes. And it's also, I've thought about this a lot and had some conversations about this in, kind of like, the therapist, like, why are we so fascinated with Mormon culture sort of, genre out there. I feel like one of the theological things that Mormons have a lot of freedom to do is to chase perfection.
Mhm.
Like that's one of the things that they like really focus on. And I feel like that is like influencing 101 is like perfect hair, perfect skin, perfect outfit, perfect presentation, perfect family. And so influencing actually like falls in line with both the theological thing, but it also allows these women to be moms and be really involved in their family life while making money.
You nailed it. You hit the nail on the head. That's exactly it.
I wonder why we're all so fascinated with like the behind the scenes of Mormon culture, specifically Mormon culture. Like, I feel like this is why Real Housewives of Salt Lake City was wildly popular, like out the gate. There was no buildup, right?
No.
We were just fascinated.
Yeah.
What do you think that's about?
I think there's a couple of things, but we all know Mormons, right? Like I'm not Mormon, you're not Mormon, but we all know Mormons. I grew up with Mormons. We have some familiarity with them and their culture, but we're not a part of it. And like you were saying, a lot of what we think about when we think of Mormonism is perfection in behavior, in appearance. And so to think that they have these secret lives where they're doing what we're all doing, or maybe even worse.
Right.
It's fascinating to us. We want to pull back the curtain. I've always been, I'm just really into like niche subcultures anyways. I love these like kind of in-group dynamics and why people join these groups and stay in these groups. But for me, Mormonism has always been so intriguing because I feel like there's so much secrecy to it. We don't know what goes on at the temple. We don't know all of the kind of the ins and outs. And this felt like, ooh, they're going to finally pull back the curtain and it's not going to be this picture perfect image that we all think it is.
I mean, to your point, it's worse. Like, I've never been arrested for a fight with a significant other, but that's how that first episode or first couple of episodes, I can't remember when it happens. That's how it ends with this like explosive fight that goes down that ends in an arrest for domestic violence. Like that's, or something similar to that. That's, I think that speaks to the oppression part.
I think so.
And I think we are going to have to dedicate an entire episode, which we'll do next time, on just the religious trauma and the oppression that we're kind of seeing kind of play out in these groups. It's
Absolutely.
fascinating.
I've got a lot to say about that and the pendulum swinging from repression to a floodgates opening.
Yes. Okay, speaking of swinging, the thing that brought these women to the forefront, and I do say women lightly because most of them were like coming into adulthood. Like that's a part of this culture is that these folks are so freaking young,
So,
for the most part, right? Or their stories started really young, and they're like in the spotlight. They've got millions of followers collectively online. They're a part of this group that's hashtag mom talk. And then the scandal breaks, and Taylor specifically is the one that goes online in a live and exposes this entire group for being part of a soft swinging circle. So what is that, Dr. Johnson?
yeah, I'm still not 100% sure. This is one of the questions that I'm left with after
Same.
the show. What I guess inferred from what was implied is that there was a level of intimacy that existed outside of these marriages that included everything up to sex. I think
Yes.
that's what that they're getting at, right? Is that what she
Yes,
left?
but it's within this circle.
Correct.
Like I think that that's an important part, that like
Yes.
these parties would happen and that there was partner swinging going
Mhm.
on. But it was considered, quote, soft swinging because they maybe did not reach some level. And like, I mean, we could have another conversation about this too.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
please define, sexual intimacy and like
Right.
what, like where's the cutoff? This is
Where a
like,
line's
when,
drawn.
yeah,
Well,
yeah,
and I think that's what went wrong is that from, this didn't play out on the show. This is from hearsay on Reddit and social media, but
right.
Taylor caught feelings for somebody in that group and it took it a little farther than everybody had consented to.
Yep. And then here we are.
And then
They've
here
got
we
to
are.
like, they have to sort of deal with that. Yeah.
Yeah. And she seems to have not that she's not taking ownership. She is. I don't think she's trying to say I didn't do that, but just doesn't seem to think there's anything wrong with it.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about some of the messy relationships that kind of play out on this show.
So
And
messy.
honestly, we could talk for 20 hours about this. So this is going to be an effort to kind of like make this concise because
Yeah.
wowza, this is wild. So first up, let's talk about Taylor and her new beau, Dakota.
Yes. Oh
What do
my.
you think of this?
Oh, I think it is so problematic on so many levels that what stands out to me is that they both have, I mean, he has a full-blown substance abuse disorder. She
Wowza.
has probably an alcohol use disorder or did. But there are just addictive tendencies on both sides and how that is just driving the relationship between them. They are living off the high of each other's chaos.
Yes, it's really intense,
Very intense.
right? Like even some of the conversations that you would see them having on the couch where like Macy, like another person is sitting on the couch and it's meant to be like a confrontation of her, but it turns into this intense conversation or discussion, like they're mad at each other, argument between each other, and the feelings are really intense.
Very.
Probably the connected feelings, like, how they feel like they're in love with each other, but desperately intense in the way in which they fight and argue and these sort of moments break down.
Yeah. And, obviously things don't always go according to plan, but those are kind of some issues that we should work through before we build a family.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
because you bring
Yes.
a pregnancy into that and you feel even more attached to the person. It's messy.
So I feel like this is one of those like tender things. I feel like people had really strong reactions to her pregnancy journey. And I have feelings about it, but I felt bad about having feelings about it.
Same.
Right. Because
Same.
like women should be able to have babies or not have babies.
Exactly.
According to their own timeline. But there was something kind of odd about the first episode or two being about this like, oops, I'm pregnant. And then the loss of that pregnancy.
Yeah.
And then the feelings about that and even the relief because they were no longer like having this baby outside of the confines of marriage, however the Mormon
Mhm.
church, kind of demands that happens. And then you get to the second, third episode and she's pregnant again and very pregnant. And I think the viewers were sort of left with some feelings about that. We don't want to have feelings about it, but we
Right.
do.
Right, and I think when I sat with that, what I came to is the icky feelings I had about that were the fact that I wasn't convinced that she wanted a baby because she wanted to
Mm,
build her family. I think she was maybe trying to attach herself to Dakota in some way. I think maybe
mm.
she was trying to have an excuse to or not an excuse, but a motivation to stay sober because she had a drinking problem.
Ooh.
I think she also maybe was trying to still fit in that culture, and that's what women do in that culture. So
Uh-huh.
I just wasn't convinced that this was a baby conceived for the right reasons. So it was hard to be
Yeah.
happy for her.
Yeah. And it's hard to watch. I think this is maybe what happens in real life too. It's like when the motivations behind it are hard for an outsider to sort of like get behind or like understand or
Yeah.
hold, then I don't know, like the whole experience, it's hard to know how to support that person. And I think you see the friend group doing that too. They're like, I don't baby shower. Do we show up?
Yeah.
How do we support? Like if we're supporting this pregnancy, are we also supporting the relationship, which as far as I can tell, non-diagnostically is toxic AF.
Yeah.
Lord have mercy.
Yeah. Very. And everyone feels that in the group. They're like, you want to link yourself
Right,
to this person for a minimum of 18 years?
right, right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
it's really intense.
what price is the child going to pay? If they're
Yeah.
already in domestic violence situations with each other, I mean, we all know that bringing a baby into this world is not easy and it
It's
escalates
not.
everything. It doesn't fix
Yes,
anything. I
right.
just think that violence and that chaos is going to increase. And then, my heart hurts for that child, plus the children she already has.
Yes. I so we're going to talk about Jen and Zach and the Vegas thing. So like we'll hold our comments about that. But Dakota also had his own way of showing up to Vegas, which was like I think it showed just how yucky the dynamics are when he can't even let her go. And it's all under the guise of pregnancy. It's
Yes.
all under the like, she could give birth at any moment and I wouldn't be there. I would argue that like you could get there. Not
Right?
okay. Like
Yeah.
this was a desire to control her
100%. 100%.
and to control what she did, which, I mean, that pregnancy is already controlling her. I don't know how much more like stapled down she needed to be.
Yeah, and then how stressful that must be while pregnant. I'm shocked she actually didn't
Yeah.
well, maybe she did. I don't know when she delivered, but I was
Yeah.
like, "She
Same.
gonna deliver early."
Yeah.
That level of
Yeah.
stress.
Yeah. I think you can see the impact of stress on Taylor
Oh, yes.
in that jump scare between that first episode and the next episode. You can just like see she's just a different person. She presents differently,
Mhm.
like she moves through the world in a different way. She's like a little bit nervous about some things and like upset about things that you didn't feel like she was really that sensitive to in the first episode. I mean, you
Right.
can tell that
Yeah,
that stress is like playing a huge role in how
totally.
she's functioning.
And I would be stressed if I was in a relationship with Dakota, just from what I'm
Same.
seeing. Managing his sobriety, he's just really immature in a lot of
Yeah.
ways. Like when he
Yeah.
moves in with what was that? Was that with her or with her family? I don't remember, but he moves in and he
Yeah.
shows up with like a couple of Home Depot boxes. And I'm like, sir, this is all you have to your name? Or where's your
Yeah.
couch? Where's your
Yeah.
stuff
And there's all of these like rumors circulating the entire time that he's in a relationship or like messing around
with
with
that other
someone
girl
else. And yeah, it's gross. It's
while
gross.
trying to control her in ways and
Yes.
him, I want to get married. I want to tie the knot. And it's like, are you ready for that? Is
Yeah.
that, I think you want to have some kind of control over her. And you see that happening through marriage and a child.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ugh.
Control and possession.
Yes. Possession is probably a better
There's
word for it.
some way that like having a child with someone, I think he thinks gives him possession over her, her decisions, like her life, her
Yeah.
money. I don't know. I don't know what that looks like, but it's
Yeah.
possessive to me.
Well, and in the Mormon culture, from what I understand, it is that way because we saw like with the baby blessing how all of the men were
Yes.
driving that ship of
Yeah.
blessing the baby.
Yeah, well, if you like jump into kind of the Mormon belief system, the men are the priest holders, not the
Mhm,
women. The
mhm.
men are the priest holders, which means they are the ones that have connection to God. And women are only allowed into heaven or into the like upper echelon of heaven
It's married.
if they are married to a priesthood holder.
Wow.
So this is like it's so baked in, right?
Mhm.
So I think there's maybe these questions out there of like, why does Taylor put up with this? And the answer, I think, is deeply embedded in like, this is how the entire culture works. And not just if you go to church, you can
Yeah,
see that Taylor has obviously, like, at the beginning, has taken a step back.
right.
Then she does this, like, really weird guilt and shame, sort of like, let me get back into the church. So the
Yeah.
church me again. But at the beginning, she's kind of got like this like separate attitude towards the religion, but everyone in that community is going to the church. So you don't actually get much separation, right?
Right.
Because everyone's
Yeah.
still in it anyway.
Yeah, and I think too, to back to the question of why does she stay with Dakota? Why is she in this? This girl is used to being treated like garbage. Like we
Yeah.
saw how her mom treated her episode
Yeah.
1, and I was just
Yeah.
like, how does a mother
Yeah.
talk to their child like that in a moment
Yeah.
of need and hurt?
Yeah.
And that's what she's used to. And to me, that just spoke volumes of no wonder she's a little rough around the edges. She acts out to get attention.
Yeah.
It was, you know, she was raised in that.
Yeah. And you can kind of see that like tricky thing that people do when they're used to being mistreated is how they describe the mistreatment. They will always take the edge off of it. So
Mhm,
I can't
mhm.
remember exactly what she said, but she said something like, you know, in my family, my mom, we like boldly tell each other, or we're really
Yeah.
blunt with each
Listen.
other, right? And then you see this play out and you're like, honey, that is beyond blunt.
Yeah. There's
That's not what this is.
no, no.
But that's how she describes it because it takes the edge off of it
Right.
for everyone else that has just seen something that's like pretty upsetting to the rest of us.
There's a big difference between blunt and mean.
And boy, is she like
She's
at
mean.
the yeah, she's on the receiving end of all
Yeah.
of that meanness from Mom, from Dakota, from a lot of people actually. And um to to think that she's the one that was actually quite honest about what was going on in the
Mhm.
background of this group, I think it's interesting. I think that
Very.
that's like there's like some cry for acknowledgement,
Mhm.
right? That she's brave in some way. She might not be able to be brave with her mom and tell her mom to shut up and go away and stop talking to her like that. And she might not be able to
Yeah.
break up with Dakota, but she has found one way to be brave, and that's like telling secrets on
Mhm.
TikTok.
Yeah, wow. What that's such an interesting insight. I hadn't thought about that, but I think there really is something to that for sure. And one of the themes that kind of runs through really all of the shows that we're obsessed with to me is this the concept of power and where we
Uh-huh.
derive our sense of power and agency and control from. And I think for a lot of folks in reality TV, that's from fame, from having notoriety in some way. And when this all started, when the pilot was filmed, she was the number one girl in the group. She was the leader of Mom Talk. And I looked it up earlier. She has the most followers of anybody.
Mhm.
And in a lot of ways, that follower count is social collateral that gives her
Right.
power. It gives her money. I think she gets bigger brand deals because of that.
Right.
And so she held all of this power in the beginning. And then there was kind of this like fall from grace where I think she felt like she
Mhm.
lost a lot of that power. And so I
Yep.
wonder how much of this is like trying to get that back and in what
Yeah.
ways she does and doesn't throughout the season.
Yeah. Okay. Next up, who are we
Speaking of
jumping into
power,
next?
this is just the image of power and control. Jen Affleck and Zach. I just like the thought of calling her Jen Affleck is so
I
funny
know.
to me.
But now we have to call her Jen Affleck. Like she can never
Yes.
just be Jen.
No,
It's got to
no.
be like Jen Affleck because that was
Yeah.
like literally how she started the show
Yes.
in her
Which
first interview.
people who like have to go by their first and last name is very interesting to me. So yeah, Jen and Zach. So very, very young couple. I think she's 22. Did I get that right?
I think so. Yeah.
Can we just pause and think about where we were at 22? I'm pretty sure I was
I know.
22 when I met you.
Yeah. And I was not much older than that. I think I was like 24 when I met you.
Yes,
And oh my God, we were like barely
babies.
showing up to places with our computer charged to be able to take a class, right? Like going to the grocery store was a deal,
Oh my
right?
gosh. I
Just
didn't know.
keeping your life together.
I'm not even sure I knew how to pay my taxes at that point. And
Oh, no.
this girl's like
No.
running a whole business and household and has multiple children and is negotiating deals. And I just think about that level of responsibility that she is
She's
handling.
she's doing all of that, and she's managing a very fragile man.
A man child. Yes. While
Yes.
married to a man child.
He is a toddler, except he's in a man's body, which is dangerous.
So dangerous. So dangerous. He
Ugh.
just, I don't know much about him and his backstory. I don't think we got that much from the show. But if I had to take a guess, he seems like the kind of person who has all his life been told how wonderful he is, how he deserves the world, how everything has been handed to him on a silver platter. And well, it's just a recipe for disaster. And I find it so fascinating that he is going to med school because I work with a lot of med students and residents. And, we're not physicians, we're not that kind of doctor, but we exist in the healthcare world
Yes.
and
Yes.
rub shoulders with a lot of these folks. And the male egos are strong in that.
Woo.
Woo. It's dangerous because we don't want the people caring for our health to be like that. And also he's going to fit in so well there. He's going to fit in so
Ugh.
well. So it just made all the sense in the world to me that he's going to med school and Jen is financially
That's
supporting
right.
this.
That's
She's
right.
making
And
it happen.
yeah, so I think that this is going back to that power conversation. This played out so much with Jen and Zach because it's almost like she was like handing him power all of the
Yes.
time. It's like,
Yes.
okay, I won't do that in Vegas. Okay, I'll come to your hotel room and comfort you. Okay, we'll do it like this. Okay, my friends won't come to the baby, whatever, dedication because you're upset with them. Okay, well, like she just kept handing him power as if
Mhm.
that was her job.
Yeah.
But I think that that's a really interesting thing because I think actually she has way more inherent power. And
Yes.
that's why she kept having to hand it back to him, right?
Mhm.
Because she makes the money, she supports them, she gives them the life that they have. And because that power is sort of inherent in being like the money producer of the
Mhm.
family, she kept having to like make this concerted effort to hand him back power. And he
Yeah.
was like in that like toddler tantrum, give it to me.
Mhm. Mhm.
It was so gross.
It's so gross to me. And he doesn't strike me as the kind of guy who's like super involved with the children. Like he might be involved with them, but I'm talking about like the mental load, like the
Yeah.
caretaking.
Right.
And so she is raising two children. She is
Yes.
funding his medical school and she's running a business is what she's
Yeah.
doing,
Yeah.
making all of this money. And then, like you're saying, handing this power to him so that his ego isn't bruised, so that he can
Yeah.
feel like he's the one in power. And I thought it was interesting when she told us like kind of her family's backstory and we got that insight into,
Mhm.
maybe where her interesting relationship with power came from. Her
Mhm.
father-in-law is a heart surgeon, I think she said, which I mean, those are some of the strongest egos I've ever encountered.
Yep.
And her mom is a janitor in the same hospital. Like that power dynamic is
Woo.
so palpable. And
Yeah.
she really had to position herself well in order to feel like she had any power. But now she has all of the power. It's so interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I think that this is a conversation around like conscious versus unconscious processes that we're
Uh-huh.
all in. There can be ways in which she's like consciously, I want to be involved in this church. I want to submit to my husband. I want to manage his ego because that's my job. He's my priesthood holder, like however that plays out. And then there's what happens unconsciously. And I would argue that that's actually where most of our behavior comes from,
Yes.
right? And
Yes.
so unconsciously, she watched her mom and her dad have these like huge differentials in power. Unconsciously, she watched probably how mom had a really negative impact, like living in that like space.
Yeah.
Unconsciously, she saw what options mom had if mom ever wanted to leave, which were zero or less
Right.
than zero,
Right.
right? So I think that that's like a really interesting thing that played out so beautifully. Like we
Yeah.
couldn't have written a
No.
script
No.
better.
We could not have. And I think there's so much outcry on social media of like, girl, leave your husband, blink twice if you need help.
Yes.
And the answer to that in a lot of situations is like, well, you don't understand. It's actually a lot harder to leave than it might seem. She might not be able to. And in Jen's case, at least financially, she does have the financial means to leave. This guy would be up a creek without her.
Yep.
And yet still there are these strong ties holding her there. And I think when
Mhm.
she jumped on the FaceTime call with, I believe it was Demi and Jesse to say, like, here's why you're not invited to the baby blessing. They were having a conversation girl to girl. She was explaining herself and her family and what
Right.
the baby blessing was about. And then he just jumps in and is like, well, actually, I don't know you that well. And like, our husbands are, and the way he just took control of that conversation, like, made my skin crawl.
And the way that she just got
Yeah.
silent,
Yep. I'm just
just
going to back up and let him.
take a step back. Yeah.
I defer to you. It was like this, right, honey? Yeah, that's what we're
Yeah.
saying. Yeah, this is the message we're sending. It was like, oh, you're a different person when you're around
Yeah.
him.
So I feel like the baby blessing was kids' play compared to what happened in Vegas.
Oh, yes.
Oh
Yes.
my lordy.
Yes.
He lost his ever loving mind. And
Those
if
texts.
yes, yes. And the way in which, so if anyone hasn't seen the show, there was kind of this, there was this like girls moment. They're all going out to this show. It's Chippendales, which like, whatever. It's like, it's
It's silly.
fun. It's silly. It's not that big of a deal. It's, whatever. And it's meant to be a bunch of girls or women in the like audience screaming and having fun with their girlfriends. That's it. Like that's as deep as it goes. And so they're going to this show. I think Jessie sets it up, right?
Mhm.
And so they're like going to the show. Jen doesn't know it. And then once she finds out, she's like, oh, I
I'm in trouble.
immediately know I'm in trouble and I'm in danger. Like her response was not like, oh, he's going to be so upset. No,
Mhm.
well, or even like, I probably shouldn't just because I don't even like want to have this conversation later. Her response was frightened.
Yeah. Yeah, it was.
Like her body was saying, I'm in danger.
Yeah.
It was like a big response to something that wasn't that threatening, right? Like it
Yeah,
was fun.
totally. And there's a big difference between, I respect my partner and they're not into this and they've made a request that I don't do this. So I'm going to see myself out. That and oh my gosh, I can't do this because I'm fearful of what will happen if I do.
And she wasn't wrong
Nope.
because
He
the
lost it.
rest of that lost it.
Yeah.
He went like cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs on
Yeah.
her. And what a testament to the emotional labor that this woman does in this marriage to keep this man calm.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
She must just be dancing on eggshells always.
Always. Always.
I can't
And
imagine.
then I think the thing that I think the reason why people are on social media going like blink twice if you're okay is because in the aftermath, the amount of labor she does to make his behavior okay to her friend group.
Yeah.
Like she kind of describes things like, and in her friend group estimated that this was going to happen.
Mhm.
They guessed that this was going
Oh,
to
yeah.
happen. They predicted, they said, oh, this is exactly what she's going to say. And then you have the next screen of her like coming back to the group saying the exact things that they predicted that she was going to say. Like, oh, this was so needed for us. This fight was so needed for us. We got clarity on where we needed to be and what our values are. And I mean,
No.
the way in which she was working
Yeah.
overtime to make this man's behavior okay, insane.
Think of the level of discomfort and restlessness and anxiety you would walk around with if that was the volatility that you were managing and the volcano that you were trying
Yeah.
to prevent from erupting at all
Yeah.
times.
Yeah.
I mean, I would just be on edge.
And she didn't even go to the show.
No, she
Like
can't.
the thing he was upset about, she didn't even participate in. So
Yeah.
this is, I think, adds another layer to that control that I think is worth us saying out loud is that oftentimes it's not about what a woman actually does, right? It's not an argument around the reality, speaking
Yeah.
of reality testing, the reality of what actually happened. It becomes an argument or like a moral judgment of like even considering going to the show or
Mhm.
even being friends with the people that would go to that show or even being in Vegas to begin with. I told you that this was going to happen, sort of
Mhm.
energy.
Mhm.
So it's like everything becomes a moral issue, right? For
Yeah.
him, and he's constantly finger pointing around the moral issues that he believes that she has. Never mind the fact that he has a gambling problem,
Right?
and
And
he's
it's in
gambling
Vegas.
with her money in Vegas while she's trying to have fun with her friends.
Yes.
OMG.
Yes. Yes. It's just shocking. I can't believe it. I need more of their backstory. I need to know how we
I do
got
too.
here. What was dating like for you? Do your parents approve of each other? I need to know
Yes.
it all because this is just, it's sad and it's also fascinating to me because we all know somebody in a relationship like
Right.
this.
Right.
We all have that
Or
friend.
or people have been like,
Or yeah,
they're listening to this right now and they're like, oh yeah,
I've
yeah,
been
that
there
was a
or I'm there.
Tuesday,
Yeah, yeah,
in my life. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. We all know men like this, and it's sickening.
Oh, okay. So let's move on to another dysfunctional relationship. Whitney.
Oh, Whitney. I mean, we could do a whole episode on her
I know. And
alone.
maybe we
But
will
yeah,
because my God. So Whitney, she like opens up the series. She's moving back from Hawaii. So she's a part of this mom talk group, but all of a sudden, her and her husband and their small children move to Hawaii without any announcement to anyone. They just go. They're there for a few months. And then the show kind of opens up, her storyline opens up with them coming back.
mhm,
And she kind of shares this like really sideways, interesting story, which if you go down a Reddit rabbit hole, I don't know if any of this is true, but if you go down that Reddit rabbit hole, there's like lots of questions around what actually happened. So apparently they moved to Hawaii, but it was like coinciding with like some fears of infidelity. Like she says that he has a profile on Tinder. Reddit says that Tinder doesn't have some of the features that she was describing. So it was likely Grindr, which is a
is
whole
believable.
other, yeah, yeah, yeah. There's like a whole other layer, right?
Yep.
Of like what plays out in the Mormon church if this was Grindr,
Mhm,
right?
mhm,
Because
mhm.
there's like some deep judgments of the queer community there. Um, so Okay, so she's back and she's like trying to be involved in this group again. And she's like, she's the cheerleader. I want to revive Mom Talk. We've got to get it back on track. This was like a wonderful thing. We should do it. And then you jump to the end of season one, and she's like, I think that Mom
I'm
Talk
out.
might be dead, and I'm out. What? It was like, okay,
Yeah.
okay, what's going on here?
I think what I made of that is when she came back and, want to revive Mom Talk and make it what it used to be, she was saying, Kayla Frankie Paul is a mess. Get rid of her.
Yeah,
I want to be the leader of the group. Oh, wait, no one actually likes me and I'm not going to be the number one girl in the group. Then I'm
yeah,
out. I
yeah.
think that's what was really going on in her mind.
Yes. So she comes back. She wants to revive it, there's this like totally unaddressed infidelity thing going on out there,
Yeah.
and we don't get any explanation. We don't know what's going on. We don't necessarily see her and her husband working through that. We don't necessarily see their relationship kind of revive itself. It's like it's the oddest thing.
Well, it's another example of let's have a baby to fix our problems.
Yeah.
Gonna
Or
work.
let's have a baby to fulfill
Me?
what we've been taught is our like duty
Yeah.
as humans or
Yeah.
as adults in this church or in this culture, this subculture. Okay, I have to talk about the
Girl.
odd video that she posted when her baby was in
Oh,
the NICU with what is it?
RSV. RSV.
RSV, like a horrible, like
Yeah.
breathing condition that babies get. And she is standing in front of his like little crib incubator doing these odd TikTok dances while her baby is hospitalized behind her. The cringe, this was like
Oh,
more than just a face cringe. This was like a whole body cringe, a whole
God.
body
It was,
ick.
yeah. I don't know how she shows her face in the world any longer because I have secondhand embarrassment for her so hard.
Did she ever explain why she did that?
No, but according to the one girl, they got high on ketamine and she said she did it for clout. But I'm like, honey, you ain't gonna get clout. Like
Well,
you're not reading the room. I don't know. No, she
yeah.
never explained it. That's just what she does. She just makes TikTok videos regardless of how inappropriate the situation is.
I mean, hence why we named a podcast reality testing. This is a picture
Yeah.
of if we were assessing someone and they came in and this was the evidence that we were presented with, we might have questions about their ability to reality test,
Yes.
to like pay attention and perceive correctly the reality of what they're living.
It's shocking. Can I just tell you that I had no familiarity with that video. I didn't know the RSV girl. I do none of it. Had never come across my anything. But when I first saw it, I thought the situation was her baby was in the NICU after being born. So I thought she was like hours to days postpartum in that video. And I had just given birth and was like, there's no way in hell that I would
No,
be TikTok dancing. I
no,
physically couldn't do it. So that
I
like
know.
added layer on top of it,
Yeah.
that wasn't the case. But still, it was just like,
Well,
what are you
and now, I
doing?
mean, but currently you're seeing her very, very pregnant
Yeah.
on TikTok. And she is like, she's doing these things. And I'm going, that is unkind to all the other pregnant women out there who just want to rot in bed
Yes.
until that baby comes because everything hurts. Everything is sweaty.
Yeah.
Everything like feels weird. Everything is swollen. Like this is unkind to the rest of
Yeah.
us.
Yeah. You don't have to dance. You don't.
No, no. You could just do like normal videos or not do any
I
in this
could
season.
barely
That would be
talk
okay.
when I was
I
that
know.
pregnant.
I know.
Okay.
I know. The amount of swelling that had taken over my body was so like I looked in the mirror and I was like, who art thou? Who art thou?
Who is
Who
she?
is this person? Yeah, I had like abs, and it stays that way for weeks to months after birth.
Yeah.
Crazy. I have never been through anything like that.
It's wild. And if you're going through that, you don't have to dance, you don't have to talk, you don't have
No,
to do anything. Just
no,
make a human.
we're here for you. Okay, so let's jump into reality testing.
Okay.
Megan, who needs a dose of reality on the secret lives of Mormon wives?
I mean, on that note, it's going to be Whitney. She is just in massive amounts of denial. She
I
doesn't
know.
read a room at all. Like she can't decipher what is going on around her and just misses. It's miss after miss after miss. And we're all just cringing. And I think when I watch her story play out and the way that she handles everything and reacts to everything, she is just such a runner. She is like in fight or flight. She's flight. I'm out of here. I got to
Yeah,
avoid. I got to leave. And then in doing so, she just makes all these blunders and then goes,
yeah,
why are people mad at me? Why does nobody
yeah,
like me? Like,
totally.
honey. So I think, we need to sit her down and have a come to Jesus moment with her for sure. Yeah.
Okay,
Who is it for
mine
you?
is Taylor. I mean, this is so
Mhm.
obvious for me, bless her heart. I hate her relationship with Dakota. I think it feels yucky from start to finish. There was never a single scene in the entire season where I was like, oh, I get it. I get what his redeeming qualities are. I get why this relationship feels good. There was never one single interaction that I left feeling like positive about. So, and rumors are that they've broken up. So, as of this recording, they
Yeah.
have broken up. But because the relationship is so back and forth, and because they now have a child together, I think that's always going to be a harder breakup.
Totally.
And so I don't know if it'll stick. So, I mean, by the time this episode comes out in a
Yeah.
few weeks, they might be back together again, and we might watch this on season 2 kind of play out over and
Yeah.
over again.
Now that like, because for reality testing, I picked Whitney, you picked Taylor. And while you were talking about that, it made me think At the end of the season, I could not stand Whitney. I just couldn't
Uh-huh.
stand the girl. But
Uh-huh.
Taylor is making some bad choices, but I like her. She's
I know
likable.
why.
I
Why
think
do
this
we
is
have different
that's what I was just
feelings?
going over in my head. And I think Whitney is trying to do it all right and is getting
Uh-huh.
it so wrong. And Taylor is like, screw it. I'm doing it how I want
Yeah.
to. And
Yeah.
is still getting it wrong, but at least she's authentic. I think that's what's
Yeah.
happening.
Yeah. And honestly, I feel like that this is like on Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. This is like the Whitney versus Lisa Barlow. Like,
Yes.
listen, Whitney is a train wreck in, in a lot of different ways, but she's trying. Heather,
Yep.
train wreck, but she's trying to be honest about it.
Yes.
And Lisa Barlow, I think, gives this impression of like, I do not make mistakes like ever.
Right.
And that I think just rubs people the wrong way.
Yeah. Same thing we were talking about a couple episodes ago with Heather Dubrow. It's just so
Yeah.
unrelatable.
Yeah. Totally.
Okay.
Okay, so let's move on to the intake. What are your first impressions of the Secret Lives of Mormon Wives?
Yeah. After season 1 or session 1, whatever we want to
Yeah.
call it, I am just so fascinated by people trying to fit into these subcultures.
Yeah.
There's just such a hyper niche culture, and the things that people will do and the mental gymnastics that they will go through to fit in while still maintaining their individuality and their
Yeah.
own identity is just so interesting to me. And I hope we explore that more in season
Hmm.
2 because there's a whole spectrum of Mormonism here, right? There's like the
Yeah.
sinners and the saints, the faithful and the
Yeah.
unfaithful. And I need more of that and how each person landed where they did.
And to be honest, that's just one subculture. Then
Yes.
there's
Mommy culture
less. There are so many subcultures here, and they're all
overlapping.
kind of converging into one.
Yeah,
It's wild.
I need more. What about you? What's your intake?
So, this is my thing. Religious trauma and
Yeah,
cults are literally my clinical specialty. And we have so much to talk about here
so
with
much.
how religious trauma and very culty vibes are kind of showing up. And I feel like I could really kind of talk through all of these different points. So I think that's going to be our next episode. We need to jump into that.
Let's do it.
Okay, perfect. All
I
right.
can't
What are
wait.
you dying to discuss?
Demi was the favorite for me by the end of the season. I liked
Uh-huh.
her the most. I think she's kind of the truth teller. And I'm dying to discuss her connection to Real Housewives of Salt Lake City and how she
Yeah.
is now married to
Yep.
Angie H's ex-husband.
Oh, we have so much to discuss there. I did a deep dive. I have sources.
Oh,
I have links. I have articles to give people. And so we're
receipt
going to talk about that.
timeline.
Yes. Yes.
I can't wait.
We are going to talk all about that. I think that is
Awesome.
fascinating. And I was shocked to see it. I watched
Yeah,
the whole season and didn't even know that connection. But
same.
now I'm ready
Now
to
that I
talk about
know.
it. Yeah.
Okay, what else are you dying to talk about?
I'm dying to talk about how this plays out with Jen and Zach. So we
Yeah.
mentioned earlier that this show was renewed for another season for 20 episodes. And I'm going to be so mad at producers if they do not talk more about Jen and Zach and how the messiness has unfolded there. Because I think the way that they ended it, they were like in this discussion, should we move to Manhattan?
Yeah.
And to be honest, I have not followed up. So I don't even know. Like, did they move? Did they go to medical school? And so I'm sure we have an idea of that because she's on TikTok and making these videos all the time. So I'm sure that that's easily found. But I want to know how that plays out and
Yeah.
how that discussion happens. And I'm hoping that they're catching that on camera.
I need it all.
Okay. So where can people find you? Where are you posting therapy memes? Where are you posting all of your good mental health information and lots of good things about reality TV? Where can people find you?
You can find me most on Instagram. That's where I hang out most. Dr. Megan Johnson. I occasionally show up on TikTok, but as was evidenced by this podcast, I can't keep up. And so I'm not there all the time. And I don't know
I
what's
know.
going on over there.
I desperately want to keep up on TikTok
Yeah.
because I think people are so funny and I
Oh,
want to be a part of that
completely.
humor, but they are also so mean and I just can't.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
and there's so much, there's so much content there that's
Yeah.
a lot to wade through that I just
For
get
sure.
overwhelmed. What about you? Where are
So
you hanging out?
I mostly am on Instagram, sometimes on TikTok at Dr. Quincy.
Awesome.
Okay. So we'll see you guys next time.
See you next time.
If you are a reality TV junkie like us and you have an idea of something you'd like for us to cover on this pod, you can email us at realitytestingpod@gmail.com. If you like today's episode, be sure to subscribe and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform so that others can find us. We had so much fun with you today. We'll see you next time. Okay, love you. Bye.